Welcome to Living Resilient Podcast. Remember, this podcast celebrates everyday ordinary men and women who have shown resilience in a particular season of their lives. Today we have Dennis Pinto. Dennis is an engineer working in the energy industry, and he founded the Energy Institute Young Professionals Network way back in 2011. And this is the network that supports young engineers coming into the work environment in order to progress their career. So they support them, help them to build network, give them the necessary tools in order to grow as engineers. So we've invited him over today to share a bit about his life, more importantly, a particular season that he underwent, underwent a loss. So Dennis, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Amma, for inviting me to do this podcast with you.
Thank you so much for coming. We always start by asking our guests, by getting to know our guest. So when you're not doing engineering work and supporting young engineers in their career growth, what would you say, or who would you say Dennis is? So how would you describe yourself?
So I'm a Christian, and I believe that we've got to help our fellow beings. So that is something that I was brought up with. My dad used to do a lot of fundraising for churches and things. So I've continued with that, and I try to help people. And as I've made my career, I've sort of said, right, I can now help other people to reach the same sort of goals.
Okay, yeah. I know we had this discussion. I said I was going to ask you, where are you originally from? I know, sometimes it's offensive to some people, but I'm asking because we need to understand, where you started from, coming over to UK and trying to unpack that journey. So where are you, where do you come from, or where would you say you're?
Yeah, so I originate in India. I came from India, and I come from a part of India that used to be Goa, but I was born and brought up in West Bengal in India,
Okay.
and I did my schooling there, and then I got a scholarship to come to London to study engineering, and that's why I ended up being in the UK.
Okay, so you came to study. I'm sure it was so different years ago
Oh, it was,
to what
yes.
it is now. And did you have lots of migrants or lots of people coming in from other countries? So how was the environment in terms of diversity?
There was diversity. There was
Okay.
people from other, but not to the same level. But it varied from parts, because I was in London, you could see it.
Okay.
So like I lived in the West End of London, and I studied in the East End, so I had to travel the length of London. And in the East End of London, they hadn't seen many foreigners, so they were very anti people of a different background,
Okay. Okay.
and you could hear them whispering on the train, like, what's he doing taking our jobs,
Really?
not even realizing you're a student, you're
Way
not taking
back
any
then,
job.
there were such comments.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you fit in? Did you struggle to fit in? Did you have any maybe direct racial
No,
abuse or?
I was quite lucky like that. I never had anything like that.
Okay.
So when I was applying for jobs, I used to joke with my friends, and I said, because of my name, people had
Yeah,
to
that's true.
they had to invite me for an interview before
Yeah.
they could see whether to reject me or not.
That's true. Dennis
Whereas,
Pinto,
yeah,
no one would
whereas
say.
when you have a foreign sounding name, they then say, "Oh, he's a foreigner."
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten this before, names. I mean, you're not the first person saying it about um because of names, they are not even called for an interview, but people that have kind of names that you can't really determine where they come from, they get invited
That's right.
for
Yeah,
interview. So that was your experience.
that was my experience, and I was lucky because my dad was very influential.
Okay.
So he helped me, introduce me to people, and they offered me a job straight away. So
Okay. Okay.
I didn't have the hassle that current students are having
Yeah.
trying to find jobs now. The market is getting very, very difficult.
Difficult and saturated.
Yes.
Okay. So in an earlier conversation with you, you said you didn't really have you you didn't really have struggle or challenges in terms of settling in the UK, finding a job, progressing in your career. So why did you, what motivated you to form the Energy Institute Young Professionals? Did you observe the way the
No,
younger generation, did you observe what they were experiencing in the work environment?
so throughout my career, I've been like that. I've been always looking out for the younger people coming in.
Okay. Why is
And
that? That's what I'm wondering. Why is that? Did you observe
because
anything?
I was thinking, like, I wasn't a father then. I wasn't married, and so
Okay.
when I started, but I was thinking, like, if I have children, I would like somebody to help them
Okay.
with their careers. So I always looked out for younger people and I helped them. So when I was in an energy company, I noticed that they were bringing graduates in, but they weren't treating them as graduates. They were treating them as cheap labor, getting them to do filing, photocopying, making teas, coffees at meetings, and stuff like that. And I sort of said, no, you need to get these people, give them jobs because they're engineers. After all, they're graduates. So we need to give them something like real projects to do things. And now I was lucky because the 4 or 5 people graduates that I had have now become vice presidents. One became the CEO of the company, and the others are all vice presidents of different companies.
That's great. So you mentor these people. I'm sure they'll be,
Yeah, yeah.
grateful for your mentorship.
So when I became chair of the Energy Institute, the committee that I joined the committee. I was the only non-white person on the committee, and I was the youngest in the committee. Everybody else was old retired people, and there was no young people, and there was no females.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
and
This was like how many years ago?
and this was maybe like in the 2000s.
Would
So
you say it's still the same or has it changed?
it is changing slightly,
Bit
but
slightly.
it's more like some of the people use it as a tick box. You got to say how many percent women, and then they get. So I started trying when I took over the chairmanship. I started bringing females to come to the so as to get the wives to come along.
Okay.
And my wife was very good at bringing younger people, and I set up student chapters at University of Aberdeen, RGU, Heriot Watt, not Heriot Watt, Dundee, and Aberdeen universities, and I used to get all these students to come to the meetings. So we used to get and younger girls would come when they saw other females that they could, because they didn't want to come along and it was just a men's group. So that started out, but then the older men started criticizing on how many young people are coming to the meetings, and they were trying to restrict me. So I decided, right, I'm going to set up the Young Professional Network. So I resigned, and I put on LinkedIn, meet me in Starbucks in Union
So you
Square,
started to, okay.
and it was filled.
So why do you think the older men or the older employee pushed back at what you were doing in terms of
They had a different view of what they were looking at it being like a club for retired people. So you could talk about, where are you going, where's your holidays, and what are you doing now, and stuff like that.
Okay.
And they weren't looking at it as a thing to educate people, in the industry. And I wanted the it to reflect what industry was like. And I said the industry, and I said to these people, we don't want to be ageist. So you don't want to say, right, you're too old or you're too young. And the idea is that the older people will help the younger people be mentors, because you're retired now, so there's no threat of losing your job. Because quite often when you're in a workplace and you've got a senior guy and a younger person, the senior person is always worried, if I train the younger person, he'll take my job.
Oh, really?
And I'll be made unemployed.
Really?
Yeah.
So does that mean that you don't get a lot of older people wanting to mentor the younger generation?
It varies. It varies, but now there's more older people wanting to mentor. There's
Now
more
it's
mentoring program is
now.
changing
Okay.
changing now, but at one stage there was that fear,
Okay.
because oil companies were going through redundancies every 6, 7 months, and you're sort of saying, right, who do you keep? Do you keep this person or that person?
Okay.
And then you keep
Okay.
this person because he's got the experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you get rid of this person. They don't have the experience, but he's got the age, because this person might retire in 3 years' time,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a gap because
Okay.
there's nobody to follow them.
So there was this apprehension
Apprehension, yeah.
in
People have these fears.
yeah, yeah. Okay, but that's changing.
It's changing, yeah.
Okay, so
and
that's
and
good.
also the Energy Institute Young Professional Network is not 100% engineers. It's all people in the energy sector.
Okay.
And we define the energy sector as from construction, so the way you build a house which is energy efficient, all the way to the oil and gas. So it's a big wide spectrum of all jobs.
Okay.
And so we've got a lot of young people now who are in renewable energies.
Okay. Okay. No, that's good. I think you're doing a very good.
And the idea of the network was we purposely called it network because we
Yeah.
said it's not like one group which says Aberdeen and you don't talk to anybody else,
Else,
you know.
yeah.
So the network it's a global network. So wherever you go, so if you go to Dubai, you got friends there. You go to Nigeria, there's friends. If you go to Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia,
Wide
Ireland,
network.
anywhere in England,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay. That's good.
there's a network there,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's a very good initiative, really. It's good. Well done. Well done for that. So when we had our chat, Dennis, you shared something very, very inspiring, very touching. You lost your spouse, your wife,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago. How many
Yeah.
years now?
So my wife died in 2017. She was very, very active, and without her, I wouldn't be able to set up this network. She was very active with the
Active
young
with the
people. She
young
loved it,
people. Yeah, okay.
and so they actually helped me through the whole process. So she passed away very suddenly. She wasn't ill or anything.
Yeah, I wanted you to, if you could just, I mean, you don't have to go into details, but just share that experience. You don't have to go into details about how she, passed away, but the experience for you and how you coped during that
Yeah.
time.
So when we were in the hospital and she was dying in the hospital, the nurse gave me a lot of leaflets from the NHS, saying that these are the things, these are all the support bodies that we have in NHS, and these bodies will support you through bereavement or illness and whatever. And so I said, fine. So I took all that stuff, not realizing what was going to happen. And then when I went to approach these groups, nobody wanted to help.
Why?
I don't know.
I don't understand. Why nobody wanted to help,
They
but they are there to support.
yeah,
So were they understaffed or lack of funding?
they wouldn't actually say what the reason was. They were just trying to find excuses of
Excuses.
not doing things.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, so then they then put me in touch with a charity that does bereavement counseling. So I thought, right, it's not only for me, it's for my family as well, because they are, and the younger people are going to be more affected than me. So I said, let's go and speak to these people. And they didn't want to see me. They wanted more. They wanted, like, pay us the money first before we do anything. And I was like, but you got to show me what you're going to do,
Do, yeah. Yeah.
before I don't mind paying you, but if it's going to be beneficial to me. But there was nothing. And so we had to build our own resilience by supporting on each other. And I was quite
When you say each other, how many? So did you come? Were you there a group of people?
a
Did you
group of
find
people.
other
Yeah,
people that
there was there
had
was
lost
there was people that my
spouses?
wife had helped,
Oh, okay.
and they all
Came to
came
support
to
you.
support me. So
Okay.
when she died, there was a young girl. Now she's sort of a woman. She's working and everything. She was the first person that came on the scene, and she was like, okay, I'll do all the running around. I'll contact the priest and I'll do all this. And you know. So she took a lot of the stuff away from me. And then when I came home from the hospital, she and her mother came and they were like, pack your bags and you're coming with us. You're not
Oh,
staying in the
okay.
house on your
Yeah,
own.
yeah.
And I was like, no, 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 I'll stay. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. And she said, no, you won't be fine. And they stayed with me till I was very tired, about 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning. And then they went home. And then they came back to see I was okay for breakfast. But they helped me through and then other people came and they helped me with the funeral. And I was quite surprised my sons took it on themselves to actually come in and stay with me,
Yeah, yeah,
because they were grieving as well. But they
yeah.
thought by sort of,
You would need it more.
by the three of us getting together, on a regular basis. So for the first 5.5 months,
Okay,
they were there
okay,
like 24/7, around the clock.
okay, okay.
And that was quite good. It helped me and it helped them as well. And so we managed to get through the bereavement process without actually ever meeting a counselor. I contacted friends who had lost their wives, and I sort of said, "What do you do?" And they were talking about things like, "Oh, we're getting rid of my wife's clothes and stuff like that." And I was like, I'm looking out a bit more beyond.
Mm-hmm.
How did you cope? And
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't explain to me anything.
They didn't explain, or maybe they didn't know what to say, or they didn't.
What advice to give me?
Well, exactly what
Yeah,
advice to give you.
yeah.
Okay. So you had no support. Okay, apart from, yes, definitely family would be with you, but also organizations and institutions that are out there, obviously to help people,
Yeah,
especially elderly,
yeah.
none of them came to your aid.
None of them came. And so people from our church came, and the priest that my wife had helped this priest get his citizenship, so he came, and he was wanting to do anything for her. So he helped with all the prayers and everything, sorting out the funeral service.
So, I mean, what you're saying is scary. So, what would you say? I mean, I'm just thinking, if you don't have anybody, how would you, if you didn't have anybody, how would you have gone through that phase?
That would have been a very difficult phase. Fortunately, I had a big support group which I didn't even know existed as such. But it's at times like this when you really realize who your friends are, because they come out of the woodwork and they do anything for you.
Yeah, yeah. But then again, I think it's but so what did you realize when you found out that you didn't get help from these organizations that are meant to be helping you, but rather you got the help and support from your immediate family, your friend, you know, the network you have built over the years. Not everybody has that privilege of, having such a network, and it's really, really scary. Like I said, for such people that maybe they don't have a family here. I mean, there's some elderly people that maybe their kids have left the country, something like that happens to their spouse, wife, or husband. I can't imagine how difficult it would be for them. But from your experience, what can you say in terms of how can this be addressed? What's your thoughts on maybe like the way forward, what you think can be done?
I think the way forward is for these organizations to be a bit more proactive, and I think it's the problem because they're all volunteers. So
Oh,
you know,
okay. So
so when
yeah,
it's a charity and it's the
yeah.
volunteers, you don't have to do anything.
Mm, mm,
So unless they realize the value of what's happening.
yeah, yeah. I think it's also for people to get plugged into one community or the other,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
because you
So
don't
it was
never
quite
know when
happening
you need.
because this happened before
Yeah,
COVID.
before COVID.
So
Yeah.
it prepared me. So when COVID happened, we started looking after all the older people in our street,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
to make sure that they had food, because people were assuming you could go online and shop. And what if you don't have a laptop or a
Yeah.
PC?
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because a lot of the older generation, they were more into walking into a bank, doing the banking,
Banking. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and then suddenly there's no banks. You
yeah.
can't go into a bank, you can't go into the shop. everything is online.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to get deliveries.
Apart from the support that you got from friends, families, and your network, how else would you say you managed to survive that period, that trauma, that loss?
I think the thing was I didn't realize I had inner strength,
Okay.
and I think that came out when the helpers started coming and I started doing things, and when people needed help, that gave me an excuse to go and do things. And that brought me out of my shell, because I was sort of retreating inside, not wanting to do things.
Okay.
And then it got me. So after 5.5 months, I was back to more or less normal, I would say. I
That
was
was
going
quick. Five
back.
and a half
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
Okay. Go back into your daily routine
Go into
and
daily
yeah.
routine and stuff like that. And my son said, "Oh, you're not never in the house now." So they went back to their life, but we've continued since then.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
Okay. No, that was quick, a very quick recovery.
yeah,
5.5 months. Some people
yeah.
grieve for years. So
No,
five
you
and a half
grieve,
months,
but
yeah.
but the thing is, your life has to carry on and stuff like that. So it was quite good. And then when COVID hit, we started looking after the people in the area.
Yeah, and I think that's what helped you because you were busy, you were
Busy,
involved,
yeah,
you were engaged in something.
yeah, helping
So
people.
you found
Yeah,
purpose in doing something,
that's
going
right.
out,
Yeah,
helping someone or helping people. So
and
that
I
was
found I could then give advice to people who had lost their parents. So this girl that helped me through the grieving process when my wife died, she lost her father. So I could help her
help her.
through that process.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So it's good to, what I would say is, yeah, having friends, family support, but also engaging in something,
That's right. Yeah,
finding the need to be involved in an activity. Usually, if it involves helping people, then you derive some fulfillment, satisfaction, and it helps you get over your own grief
that's right. Yes.
quickly,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say. Okay, no, thank you for sharing that part, bit of your life. So, what would you say a resilient person is? What would you think?
I think a resilient person is somebody who has his own inbuilt strength and can do things on their own. Because I'm like a problem solver. I like to solve problems.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have a problem to solve, you know, then you wonder like, what am I going to do now next? So I think all these sort of things help me to overcome
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
overcome the grief and
yeah.
and just carry on.
Okay, okay. All right, so let's look at it from a broader, I mean, the podcast is about resilience based on your experience, your work experience, your career, life journey, what you went through, the loss of your wife. Why do you think we need people to be more resilient? Why do you think resilience is, an important concept
I
that
th- I
people should
think as
embrace?
as I've seen it coming out of COVID, for example, when people were told stay at home, don't go out, don't do things, it's very easy to make a statement like that, but it's you don't know what's happening to people's lives.
Inside.
You know, if you're a student and you're stuck in a little room, because a lot of students had come from foreign countries and they were staying in student accommodation. They were like in one room. They couldn't leave the room. They were like prisoners in the room. And University of Aberdeen, they were even getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner in bags left outside the door. And it's this sort of thing is getting people through that because we said, look, when we went into COVID with the young professionals, I said the first thing we need to look at is mental health.
Yeah.
You know, and give them all the background information on helping them. You know, so I found two friends of mine who are mental health coaches, and they went through their own mental health problems, and so they came out with learnings for the students. So for the young professionals, so I got the young professionals that session,
Okay.
And then we did another session beginning of October,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, on mental.
So all this is helping them. I mean, you're addressing mental health, but at the same time helping them to build,
skills, yeah.
skills,
Yeah,
and
so
resilience as well.
yeah, so what we did basically is we gave them a virtual toolbox, and we said, right, every year we're going to give you some skills, So it could be conflict management, because it was things like when you're in a company and there's redundancies, how do you make yourself more important than somebody else? So you're retained and the other person is let go,
So it's all these extra skills.
So extra
additional
skills, extra skills.
Okay.
So this time we addressed sort of what happens if you're made redundant. And what we did was we got a senior manager and we tried to see the redundancy from two sides of the coin.
Okay.
Because normally you see it from your side.
one perspective.
When somebody says, okay, we don't need you
We don't need
anymore,
you.
and you think, well, this company's terrible and stuff like that, but you don't realize what the boss is going through. So the boss was explaining from his perspective, he's got to cut costs to keep the company going, otherwise the whole company's gone. And so he doesn't want to make people redundant just because he doesn't like them or whatever, but there is a reason.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I think you're doing, like I said, the Energy Institute Young Professionals Network. It's been on 2011.
Yeah.
So for it to have lasted that long, that means you're obviously doing something good. It's always obviously an impact on the young engineers. So well done, Dennis, and thank you so much. So before we round up, what advice would you give to someone? I mean, you've gone through a lot, but in terms of someone losing their spouse, their dad, mother, a loved one, what advice would you give to them in terms of hanging in there, or going through the grief process, building resilience?
I think the big problem is people try to keep, if there's a problem, people try to hide it. They don't want to show it to people. And that causes more problems. So I think share your grief with other people and let them see what you're going through, and then they will help you, and also build your networks. So it's very important when you're in business to have a good network.
And that is network. Yeah. Sorry, I wanted to say when you said share your grief, it is all about vulnerability. So being be willing to be vulnerable. I think that's what people are.
Yeah, that's right.
They want to show that they're vulnerable, or they are grieving. They want to show that they are strong. So is that?
It's because people perceive you as something, so you try to make yourself look like that, but you don't have to be.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming once again.
Okay.
And that's the end of this session. Remember, if you do have any story you want to share, send me an email to livingresilient101@gmail.com. And remember to also like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Always stay encouraged, get enlightened to become empowered. Thank you, and bye for now.